Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for gathering for the after-service forum. The topic for today is, who are all the ministers at OUUC? There's a bunch of us. I'll tell you how this came to be. And we will do what we do when we gather. We'll light a chalice. So the chalice lighting words are from Gary Smith. We light our chalice in honor of all those who serve in ministry. May the chalice be to us a symbol of sharing their faith and hope. May the flame remind us of the giving of their lives and love upon the altar of service and truth. So the service, this forum came about because several months ago, I think it was in August sometime, at a Sunday service, Troy commented that we were swimming in ministers. I think most of us here were there that day, and Troy had just observed that there were a lot of us. And, you know, I've commented to my colleagues that some people say that UU ministry is lonesome in a town the size, you know, it's lonely in the town the size of Olympia where there's only one UU congregation. I am very grateful not to be lonesome at all. It's just lovely to have colleagues. I'm very grateful for the support of my colleagues for many things, including that they said yes when I asked if they would do this forum today, and to share a little bit about who they are. So my hope for today is that you will get to know all of us a little bit better, perhaps to want to talk to us about something that you hear, a point of curiosity or connection, and to understand how each of us is in relationship to OUUC. So we'll have some time for questions at the end if there's anything that occurs to you, so I would ask that you hold on to those until then. And because I'm your settled minister and I decided the order, I get to go first. So I'm the Reverend Mary Geer. My pronouns are she, her, and I like to be addressed as Reverend Mary, and Mary works as well. I was raised and confirmed in the more liberal arm of the Lutheran Church in the Midwest, and in my teens, as many teens do, I left the church for a number of reasons, including that the theology didn't seem to fit, and the practice of my home church didn't make sense to me. We were a white church in the middle of a black neighborhood, and we never, ever interacted with our neighbors. I didn't understand, and I wasn't encouraged to ask. And I remained unchurched until my late 20s, when my husband John and I found ourselves in eastern Washington in the Tri-Cities, and we found a small UU fellowship there because we were looking for community. My first career was as a social worker, which I did for over 20 years, and it was in that work that I first heard a call to ministry. Reverend Catherine Burt, who spoke here a few weeks ago, was my minister at the time, and she was the first minister that I ever spoke to about this thing that was happening and that I was hearing. That was in 2001. And it took me 12 years to make the decision to leave my career, what I thought was my career path, and leap into ministry. If you heard Reverend Sarah's sermon, that was a period of unforming for me. It took a while, but it certainly happened. I attended Starr King School for the Ministry in Berkeley, graduating in 2017. I was ordained in February of 2018 jointly by the UU Congregation of Salem, that was my home congregation, and the First Unitarian Portland, where I was serving at the time. I have served UU congregations of all sizes. I was the first paid music director for the Salem congregation, which is a pastoral-sized congregation. And while in seminary, I served as the first minister for a small UU fellowship in McMinnville, Oregon, which is a family-sized congregation. I served as the assistant minister at First Unitarian Portland, which is a large corporate-sized church. And now I serve you in a program-sized congregation. I am the congregation's settled minister, your settled minister, which means that you went through a formal search process and considered several ministers. And after a week of getting to know each other, it's like speed dating, you took a congregational vote to ask me to be your minister. You took the vote, and I said yes on May 5th of 2019. I have a ministerial agreement with you, the congregation, that is signed by the board president on your behalf, and it outlines our expectations of each other. There is no time limit on that agreement, that covenant, and I will remain your minister until one of us decides that it's time to do something different. As your minister, I serve as a spiritual leader, leading worship and other services, teaching classes and teaching forums and in other ways, and also teaching by example, and by inviting us to put our faith into action. I am also the executive director of this nonprofit, which means that I work with a board, I supervise staff, I manage a building and a budget. And all of this is my ministry with you. All of it is ministry. I could be a member of the congregation. It's not, it is allowed by the OUUC bylaws. I choose not to be a member because I think it's a conflict of roles. That's how it feels to me. I am a minister in full fellowship with the Unitarian Universalist Association, which means that I went through a bunch of hoops and did a bunch of things to be recognized by our denomination as a faith leader. And I am a member in good standing of the UU Ministers Association. That means that I abide by a code of conduct for UU ministers that includes our ethics and standards of practice. It's the covenant between all UU ministers. And it also requires that we complete continuing education every year that has regular courses on ethics and professional boundaries, anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multiculturalism. And in addition to serving as your minister, I serve our Loud Your Faith by working on a UU history project with our Ministers Association and serving as a mentor to a minister who is in preliminary fellowship, which means that they're just going through all the hoops right now that are required to get to full fellowship. So with that, I think I'll pass it to you, Reverend Sarah.
So I'm Reverend Sarah, she, her pronouns. You can call me Sarah or Reverend Sarah, either is fine with me. And I am the odd duck out in this lineup of UU ministers. I am not a UU minister. I'll explain more about that in a bit. I am a Unitarian Universalist. So I've been a Unitarian Universalist since I was 15. I found Unitarian Universalism on my own when I was young enough I had to ride the bus to church because I couldn't drive yet. My parents don't attend any church, so I was unchurched prior to that. I know, shocking. So Unitarian Universalism has been my thing ever since, and I have attended many UU congregations. So when I moved to Olympia in 2001, when I was a young adult attending the Evergreen State College, I started attending OUUC. And I had my children here and began volunteering in the religious education program. I got my master's in teaching from Evergreen, thinking I was going to be a high school chemistry teacher, which was not a good fit. And so fortunately, before I had to figure out what on earth else I was going to do with my life, the director of religious education job became open. The congregation was in a full interim for their religious education position and doing a full year-long search for their next religious educator. So I applied without realizing that it was going to be a year-long job interview. In the end, I became the director of religious education here in 2008. And began the process of becoming credentialed as a Unitarian Universalist religious educator. The process for religious educators in our faith tradition is that you have to get hired by a congregation first and then enter into the formation process after. So I completed my credentialing with the Unitarian Universalist Association in 2014. As what was then called master level credentialed religious educator. They've now changed it to leadership level, but it's the highest level of credential that they offer. In that time, I often would hear people say, "Oh, you're such a good DRE, you should become a minister," as if you say to like a really good nurse that they should become a doctor. It's kind of a similar thing. They're both a valid profession in their own right. And actually, Reverend Carol, at one point, overhearing someone say this to me, said something super helpful. She said, you know, Sarah already has a ministry. Sarah has a ministry as she is, which I really appreciated, that being a religious educator already is a ministry. So thank you, Carol. But in fact, I did feel called to some other form of service, and it was really around my heartbreak over climate change and my beginning to participate in the eco-chaplaincy movement that I felt called to go to the Chaplaincy Institute and pursue ordination through that route. It's an interfaith seminary. There's a lot of UUs who go there, but it's not a UU seminary. It was actually super healing for me to go there because my parents, being unchurched and rather woo-woo new age, I had gone and found the UU church all by myself and gone right up into my head and been like, oh, all that woo-woo stuff that my parents do. No, I'm going to get super intellectual about it all. So I went to an interfaith seminary that is pretty woo-woo, and it was healing for me. So that was a wonderful process. And I was ordained through the Chaplaincy Institute in 2022. You all were super loving and supportive, and it's been really wonderful how these things can flow together. My role here is now Director of Community and Faith Development. My role here is not as a minister. Being ordained is just an extra that is kind of on top of what I do. But I do appreciate that being ordained means that I can wear a collar to faith events in the larger community, as well as all the skills that I have learned through chaplaincy and through becoming a spiritual director. Those also are sort of like icing on top of the cake. But my role here is primarily still as a religious educator, and that is where my UU professional affiliation lies. I'm a member of the Liberal Religious Educators Association. They have a professional code of conduct, and I am in covenantal relationship with my other religious education colleagues, as well as all UU religious professionals of all types through our shared understanding of joint ethics and covenant with our faith. But I also am held to a code of ethics by the Chaplaincy Institute, which renews my ordination annually. The way that they do clergy in good standing is that we resubmit what we've done for continuing education and what we are still doing in our ministry. It's not terribly onerous, but it is an annual packet of what have you been doing and what have you studied, and okay, now you're still a clergy in good standing. And they would remove my ordination if I violated their code of ethics and went through that process. I'm also held to professional standards by Spiritual Directors International and the UU Spiritual Directors Network, who all have their own professional codes of conduct. So lots of different relationships, but I'm not in the covenantal ministerial relationship through the UUMA that other UU ministers are in. So not fellowshipped is the way that it is said also. I have served this congregation in lots of ways and really grown and love it very much. So this is a long-term plan for me. Nurses don't always go off and become doctors. This is a ministry in its own right. My relationship with Reverend Mary is my staff supervisor. And we also really have a beautiful shared ministry. And I tell people all the time, shared ministry doesn't mean co-ministry. Like, we're all sharing shared ministry. We all are. And we have also a covenant between the two of us of how we will be together. So that is me, and I don't know what your order was. So
It's right there.
Oh,
I think Carol's next.
Carol's next.
Oh, I love this little handle thing here.
Isn't that nice? Yeah.
So I'm Reverend Carol McKinley. I use she, her pronouns, and my preferred form of address is just Carol. So how did I get into this business? I've been long interested, practically almost since my cognitive years, long interested in religion and the power of faith to nurture transformation and positive change in the world, in individuals and in the world. And I really have to credit the Edmonds UU Church in the mid-1960s with bringing me into this tradition. And like many of the people who come here, I went to the Edmonds Church because a friend said, "Why don't you come to our church? I think you would like it." And I did. So I have one of those checkered paths in terms of careers. Following graduation from the University of Washington, I taught secondary English and history, and I also have taught in 3 community colleges. I then owned here in Olympia an out-of-print antiquarian bookstore, and from that bookstore I became executive editor of A.B. Bookman's Weekly, the journal of the antiquarian book trade, which is centered in New Jersey. When I returned to Olympia, I then went to work for a Washington state agency that serves the legislature. So, as I said, I've always been interested in that intersection of universal religious values and public policy. So in the year 2000, at age 60, I had the opportunity to retire early from the state, and I entered seminary at Seattle University School of Theology and Ministry with a focus on community ministry, working in the larger community rather than in the parish, as Reverend Mary does. I served during my seminary years, internships at Thurston County Interfaith Works, and also in state prison chaplaincy. And as Reverend Mary did, I went through all those hoops during seminary and the meeting with the ministerial fellowship committee, and I am fully fellowshipped with the UU Ministers Association. And my relationship to this congregation, I've been here since the mid-90s, and this congregation sponsored my path to ministry. Arthur Vaney was my mentor and served very much as a model for ministry for me. This congregation ordained me in 2006, thanks to Linda Hart, who chaired my ordination committee and served as a wonderful model for ministry. I'm very grateful to her and to this congregation. I was officially named an affiliated community minister with OUUC in 2007. And Tim Ransom, I looked at that document just the other day. Tim Ransom was president of the board, and he signed that document, officially documenting my affiliated community ministry. And my role here is always to support the minister, the parish minister of this congregation, and the congregation itself. As Sarah mentioned, and as Mary mentioned, we have covenants. I have a covenant with the UUMA, and I also have a covenant with Reverend Mary, as I've had with every minister in this congregation. That covenant specifies our relationship, including our boundaries and expectations of one another. I am not an employee or staff member of this congregation, but I am a minister in relationship with the congregation. While I was here during my years of active ministry here, I coordinated OUUC's Faith in Action program and also coordinated our statewide UU Voices for Justice, our advocacy group in the state legislature. I've also, over the years, taught a number of adult education classes, including History of Unitarian Universalism, American Religious Traditions, Anti-Racism and Multiculturalism, and currently teaching a class on aging and spirituality. I have been active in our Pacific Northwest District Board. I served on the board and also as president of the board. I also served on our district and region's Healthy Congregations team, and I served on a team that made the transition from our district to the Pacific Western region. And I officially retired from the UU Ministers Association in 2023. I'm now a lifetime member of that organization, which they declare everyone who retires. So right now, my role is to teach an occasional class here as well as in other congregations. I'm also facilitating the OUUC Caregivers and Grief Group, and I regularly do supply preaching in 3 other smaller congregations with which I have a long-time relationship. And I also feel I continue to support the ministry of this congregation and its ministry in our larger community. And I'm very grateful to be here. So thank you.
I felt like clapping after each of you.
Eric, you want to come up next? Eric. Oh, okay, Linda can go next.
Who was it?
No, it was Eric, but you're good.
Okay. All right. Because I jumped up.
See, that's me, just getting ahead of everything. So I am Linda Hart, the Reverend Dr. Linda Hart, thank you very much. But call me Linda. I came up in ministry prior to the Rev first name, and so I'm just used to being called Linda. I am a 3rd generation Unitarian. My grandparents were married at the Unitarian Church in Cleveland, Ohio, and my family and I went to my parents met at All Souls Church, Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C. My mother went because it's where all the cute boys went to youth group, and managed to meet my father there. And she found a lifelong love of Unitarian Universalism, going on to be really a national figure, serving on boards and commissions and so on throughout her life. As I say, grew up as a Unitarian Universalist at the Unitarian Church of Rockville, Maryland. That's what it was when we joined there in the early 60s. I did all of my RE there and liberal religious youth, the youth group at that time, and then was an adult member there for a period of time. I missed that one. Not following the pattern very well. So there I am. I attended seminary at Meadville Lombard Theological School in Chicago. At that time it had a physical campus. It no longer does in Hyde Park in Chicago. And I had a somewhat extended time there. I did a Doctor of Ministry, which was supposed to be a 4-year program, but in the midst of all of that, my mother died, and I took a few years off and then came back and finally graduated in 1988. I was ordained, though, prior to that, before I got through all of the hoops, by my congregation, the congregation where I grew up. My mother was diagnosed with cancer in what should have been my last year, cancer of the colon, and in 1983 in the fall. And at Christmas time, one of her dear friends, a minister of a neighboring church, said to me, "We have to get you ordained before Mary dies, and she's not going to last." And so that spring, on April 1st, I was ordained by the congregation that raised me, with my mother in attendance, and a month later she was dead. I decided to go into ministry really when, I guess there are two pieces. I decided to go into ministry when my beloved minister from my teen years, my childhood and teen years, died. I was in school in Maine. I flew home to be there for his service, and just decided at that point that I wanted to carry on that ministry that he had given to me. When we were, he would host youth overnights at his house, God forbid, as a minister. Now I'm like, what, really? Can't not even imagine. But we would come, he'd be writing a sermon on Saturday night, and we'd come up and we'd get us cigarettes and we'd say, like, don't smoke any further than this, and draw lines on them and do all sorts of things. And he was always there for us in such an authentic way that it inspired me into ministry. And I have to say also, I knew that it would make my mother happy, and who doesn't want to make their mother happy? That brought me there. I have served in a bunch of different places. I started off out of seminary in a community-based ministry in Chicago, the Northside Ecumenical Night Ministry, working in a housing program for homeless teens. We developed support groups in local congregations and licensed foster care parents to provide ongoing support for kids who wanted to get off the street. It was a very powerful and hard ministry that I did. After that, I was called to a congregation in Woodstock, Vermont, followed by an interim in Danbury, Connecticut, and then called to the Spokane congregation. While there, I met my husband, Peter, got pregnant. Things at the church were a little funky, so I left that and had what I call my maternity sabbatical. And then when that ended, my family moved to southwest London so that I could serve the Unitarian Church of Richmond and Putney with the British Unitarians, which was a delightful almost 7 years that we spent in England. Coming back, I worked as an interim at Marysville, Evergreen UU congregation there, and then developmental, and then called at the Tahoma UU congregation. And then the last 2 years I was up at Quimper in Port Townsend, and now I am retired. Woohoo! So my relationship to OUUC, the first thing to say is that my husband grew up as part of this congregation, which is just a really fun piece. When he and I met online and we're having a little chat online, he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Get brave." And he said, "I'm pretty brave." And I said, "I'm a minister." And he said, "Cool, what kind?" And I said, "Unitarian Universalist." And he said, "Cool, I grew up as a UU." And I thought, okay, this is not happening. This is like, really? What are the chances? So anyhow, we've been married a long time now. And when Peter was working for the state, he promoted up to headquarters, derived for licensing, and we moved over here. I was a mom with a baby on her hip when we first started here. I got outed as a minister eventually, and so during Art Vaney's time, actually Art and Sally and Peter and I and Claire all arrived for the first time here on the same morning. And I had known Arthur when I was in Woodstock way back when. And so it was this hilarious kind of moment. I was like, "Art!" And he was like, "Wait, why are you here?" You know, just did not get it. Anyhow, so we were here, we've been here for on and off for a very long time. We're not members at the moment, but we will be eventually, Peter and me. Yeah, we will. We just haven't gotten to that point yet of signing the book or whatever it is we have to do. You know, we're here, we're in. You can tell because we've already pledged. What do we do here as volunteers? Peter and I, when we moved back here, we were like, okay, we're cooking on Thursdays. That's our commitment. We're cooking on Thursdays and we're coming on Sundays. So now we have, one of my cousins said, you know, when you retire, it's like Saturday, 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 Thursday, Saturday, 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 Sunday. Saturday. So we have Thursday and Sunday taken care of in our lives. And we're here on Sundays when I'm not preaching elsewhere, which isn't happening much, though my first 7 weeks of, out of the first 8 weeks of my retirement, 7 of them were spent in pulpits. That was not the best way to end. Anyhow, silly me. Mary and I are in covenant with one another. I knew Mary when she was still in training, many years ago now, and we have a covenant with one another, and of course we're bound by the UUMA covenant as well. I'm a life member now as a retired person. And I'll just say, I'm just really grateful to be here as a member and as a person who can help out in whatever ways are possible. So, thanks. And the next one will be Eric, please.
I had to write down a few notes anyway. This has been fun. I grew up as a Lutheran in Seattle. Both my parents went to Ballard High School, and so, I believe my first inclination toward ministry came during Lutheran confirmation, and we had a youth minister in that church who was not too far from seminary, and he talked about Paul Tillich, and in that book, The Courage to Be. And I thought, wow, okay, I'll get that book, and I did, and wow, I liked it. And I reread it, and it's still on my bookshelf right now. And so that began my journey, but it was a journey also of, ministry. I really don't want to spend Saturday nights worrying about a sermon that I haven't concocted, and I don't want to inflict such things upon a good congregation. And so it's been a wrestling match for a very long time, and that is both in the Bible as to the wrestling with the angel, with Jacob and becomes Israel. And the common story that a lot of people going to seminary relate to is the story of Jonah. You want me to preach to Nineveh? And he's on a boat, to the farthest ranges of the earth. And oh my gosh, a storm kicked up. Who's the person who offended God? Oh, it's Jonah. And they pitch him overboard, gets swallowed up by the whale. Yeah, right. And then gets coughed up on the beach. And okay, God, as he's scraping off the slime, I get it. I'm not going to feel right until I become a minister. And gee, maybe I can try to do this without preaching too much. And so my father happened to own a small crane company in Ballard, and I worked summers there from high school and college, and I'm a member of Local 302 Operating Engineers, get my little bit of a pension there. And I had the letters CDL, Combination Driver's License, on my driver's license from the time I was, the summer after high school. But through working there a long time, I decided I'd honor the Buddhist ideal of right livelihood. I really wasn't a good fit, and I'd already gone to the University of Washington, got a degree in psychology, and I decided to get through working in the day and attending school at night. I got a master's degree in psychology from Antioch University in Seattle. Through that experience of getting a master's degree, that's when I found that I could not escape my call to the ministry. And so I decided to go to seminary. I became a UU in '92, and so I decided to go explore seminary through getting a unit of clinical pastoral education at Virginia Mason Hospital in Seattle, and so I was able to juggle that, and I did that, and I thought, I could do better. And so I went to Starr King School for the Ministry, and usually after the first year of instruction, the summer is take a unit of clinical pastoral education. I'm going to do this again, even though I've got one under my belt. And I did that second unit at Sequoia Hospital in Redwood City, just south of San Francisco. So it was a bit of a commute, but it was well worth it, because I came through that feeling, this feels right for me. And so did some more regular courses in seminary, and I did a clinical pastoral education. I get another 3 units, so yeah, a total of 5, at UCSF Medical Center in San Francisco. And I didn't know when I was applying there that this was one of the greatest institutions of medicine around. Holy cow. But there it was all there, with about 5 floors of ICU, and one of them was just related to children, and that was one of the toughest rotations I had, and I did that. And my parents were getting elderly. My father died, or my father had a bad stroke before I graduated from seminary, and so I looked for a place up here. Found it with Providence Sound Home Care and Hospice here in Olympia. And at first I was half in the hospital and half time in hospice, and they asked me, well, say both these programs are expanding, which way do you want to go? And I said, well, I want hospice, because then I'd be able to see someone more than just once, and I'd be able to develop a relationship. So, and I did hospice until 2011. My father, well, as I was settling in here, my father needed visits from his 3 sons, and then my mother would visit the other 4 days, and up in a care center. And my day was Saturday, so every Saturday from the time I lived in the Pacific Northwest till my father died in March. He got a visit from his 3 sons and then my mom. And then my mother got breast cancer, and well, she knew she had breast cancer in the summer of 2011. That's when I retired, and she died in 2012. So my brothers and I, we helped her. And then I was ordained by this wonderful congregation way back when. And then I had to preach some sermons, and I, wow, you know, found out, yep, I really don't like to do that. And, but it was part of the deal to, there's 2 years after you're ordained where you become certified and, or fully fellowshipped. And I got to do all this extra stuff on top of my chaplaincy work, but yeah, there it was. And so I did that, became fully fellowshipped, and now I'm retired. And yeah, as Carol said, just still, I've got that continuing fellowship. They don't just take it away from you when you retire. And what's expected of me here as a minister here in OUUC, I've that's on my next page. I very much enjoy the Sunday services, and I've served on the Board of Trustees, chaired a pledge drives, taught classes, helped over the years, with many years, with books, beans and brownies. 1 year, I mean, I really don't like to sit in meetings. And 1 year I told the then chair of the Books, Beans and Brownies, say, if I don't have to do any meetings, and that was when the container of that 1 year was over here because they were building up the RE section. And if I could, take all the books and put them in boxes, and you don't have to do that. Okay. It was cold in that container, because the Books, Beans and Brownies was in February. So I very much enjoy right now being on the building and grounds team. And that bunch of goofballs has the most humor I've ever seen in a committee, and while getting the most done. And so I have this, with that wonderful humor, it carries me on through the whole week. And sometimes we have, twice a year sometimes, we'll have pizza and beer, right there in the RE section for our committee meeting. So that's where I'm at. And the next one is
It's Nancy next.
Nancy.
Yeah. So we have 2 more folks to hear from, and then I have a couple more ministers to mention, because we warned you there are a bunch of us, right? So Reverend Nancy Reed McKee was not able to be here today, but she sent some words for me to share and a picture so that you can see her face and know who she is. So these are Nancy's words. I wish I could be with you all, but I am at the West Side UU congregation in Seattle this morning. The sermon I'm giving today is titled Love at the Center, which summarizes the ministry I am currently involved in with the transgender community, specifically organizing UUs across Washington state to help Pink Haven to provide safe living spaces for our transgender kin who have been targeted in other states, resulting in their need to flee here. This is part of the call I had to ministry, the call to be part of the healing of our world. Prior to attending Star King School for the Ministry, I worked as a nurse practitioner in specialties in both women's health and family health. I always served in public, nonprofit settings such as the Indian Health Service, Veterans Administration, or public health clinics. Equally important was my training and work as a community organizer, mostly doing congregational justice organizing in Arizona. My call to ministry came in 2014 when I felt compelled to find a way to integrate my desire for spiritual deepening with my passion for social justice. Some of the most life-changing moments during seminary were taking a spiritual pilgrimage to Turkey to participate in the Sufi spiritual practices and working in San Quentin prison in a reconciliation program with those who were incarcerated. Nancy continues, I graduated from seminary in 2018 and was ordained in Granite Peak UU congregation in Prescott, Arizona. My ministry internship was with the Shelter Rock UU congregation on Long Island, New York. My first and only parish ministry was in Kirkland, Washington at the North Lake UU congregation. I began there just a few months prior to COVID, so my ministry was primarily focused on surviving and recovering from how the global pandemic impacted church life. I left parish ministry in 2024 and began working very part-time with the Washington State Action Network, Justice Washington, with the goal of organizing UU congregations around gender and reproductive justice. Because I am retired, I also choose to volunteer with issues that have always concerned me. I'm very involved with the UUA Commission on Social Witness, and together with the Church of the Larger Fellowship, am part of exploring how UUs can be involved in the abolition work. I am also involved in the Immigrant Justice Network and attend trials at the Northwest Detention Center to support the folk that ICE has detained. Some of you know that my personal passion is as a potter, and I have my own studio in my home. I'm a member of the UU congregation, this is Nancy again, because I very much believe in being part of institutions that can organize us to love the world into healing. Reverend Mary is a personal friend who I got to know during our time in seminary together. She and I are in constant communication about what I do at OUUC because I am not serving in the role of the minister at this congregation. We have a written covenant that helps guide my relationship to church members, groups, and ministry, and this helps define my limits as well as what I might offer to the congregation while freeing me to find ways that the congregation can support my spiritual growth. So far, this has meant singing in the choir and helping with occasional events that the church sponsors. I hope to gradually do more as time and energy and passion move me. Reverend Crystal, would you like to?
Hi, I am Reverend Crystal Zerfas. I use she, her pronouns, and I hope this is okay. It's regular practice for me to offer a visual description. I am a short, relatively short, fat Caucasian woman with very short, dirty blonde and silver hair. I'm wearing a dark blue cardigan and a green and blue button-down shirt with a chalice pendant necklace, and dark pants. I typically go by Reverend Crystal. Some people call me Rev Z, which is fun, but I'm also fine if you just call me Crystal. That's fine as well. A little bit about me. I began discerning my call to ministry when I was in college studying sociology. Following a line here, there's stuff here that seems to be a Lutheran connection all along. I actually began my candidacy to become a Lutheran minister around the same time that I came out as lesbian. Unfortunately, I couldn't abide by the restrictive rules at that time, so I put my ministerial call on hold and decided to instead develop my first career in social services. That's how I came to Washington. I worked for a number of different nonprofits, serving folks on the streets, people experiencing domestic violence, helping low-income women looking for work, and much more. During that time, I also left Christianity altogether and wandered for a number of years before I found Unitarian Universalism. Home. Then, after 4 years back east serving as a live-in caregiver for my elderly grandparents, I returned to Washington and started seminary. I attended Seattle University School of Theology and Ministry. I received preliminary fellowship with the Unitarian Universalist Association in 2018, and fulfilling that 23-year journey, I was ordained into Unitarian Universalist ministry in 2019 by both the congregation I was serving at that time, Community UU Church in Pasco, Washington, and my home congregation, Westside UU Congregation up in West Seattle. I am what we refer to as a parish minister. I serve in congregational ministry, like Reverend Mary. I have served congregations in Washington, Oregon, and Alaska. Most recently, I was serving the Tahoma UU congregation in Tacoma and Inland Northwest UU community in Spokane before my health necessitated my leave of absence from active ministry. I suffered a traumatic brain injury in January of 2020. And despite the incredible gains during my first 2 years of healing and my subsequent return to ministry, I am currently not serving a congregation, and I'm focusing primarily on my ongoing recovery right now. I have had the pleasure of being invited to share in worship with you all here at Olympia UU on a number of occasions in the past years. Some of you may recall my time in your pulpit, most recently in the summer of 2023. These days, you may see me attending worship on occasion with my fiancée, Suzanne, who became a member this year, or pass me in the building on my way to a meeting, if I'm here occasionally. Reverend Mary and I are friends, and we are ministerial colleagues. Gratefully, we had the opportunity to work together for a year when I was an intern in Portland, and we both participated in each other's ordination ceremonies. We are in covenant with one another through the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association, sharing a code of professional boundaries and ethics, as we've been hearing, and we covenant together to respect, support, and celebrate one another's ministry. I'm thrilled to be here. It's been great to listen to everybody else's stories, but I'm thrilled to be here with you today to tell you about myself, to answer any questions you may have, and to celebrate in the thriving ministry you share with your minister, Reverend Mary. Thank you.
So there are two more ministers to mention this morning who have been or are connected to OUUC. The first is Bill Arnsmeyer, who's sitting here in the front row. Bill and I talked about what I might say, and these are words that we came up with. Bill was the very first minister for the Unitarian Fellowship of Olympia, the UFO, back in 1978, when it was housed in the little white church in Tumwater. That's still there on B Street. After working as an occasional volunteer speaker for several years for the fellowship, Bill was hired to serve the fellowship part-time for a year, mostly preaching on Sundays. Bill worked on staff in this building at OUUC as a caretaker and manager of the shelter that was next door, where that house is, for many years. He also helped organize Camp Quixote, which was the tent village for those who were without homes when it was housed here in the parking lot. In 2002, Bill was given the Human Rights Award from Thurston County in recognition for his work with those who are houseless. Bill is a botanist by training and spent most of his professional career in that field. He currently leads botany field trips for school-age and middle school-age children. He tells me about those trips often and how he works with the kids. Bill attended seminary at Claremont School of Theology, a Methodist school, graduating in 1969. He says he was never formally ordained, but was given the title of Reverend when people at the UFO started calling him that. So Bill told me that for him, the title wasn't nearly as important to him because he knew that his profession would be botany. Over the years, Bill has preached sermons at UU fellowships and Methodist and Presbyterian churches in Arizona, Montana, Texas, and Saskatchewan. He has been a member of this congregation, OUUC, since 1977 and attends now with his wife, Cheryl. You can find Bill often on Thursday evenings for the dinner. Bill says this congregation has been a constant source of stability and support for him through his somewhat tumultuous life, sometimes tumultuous life, and he is the father of our sexton, Marie Arnsmeyer. And the last person to mention who has been in relationship with this congregation is the Reverend Arthur Vaney, who served OUUC from 2001 and through 2014, the spring of 2014. He was designated as a minister emeritus for OUUC when he retired. The title of minister emeritus or emerita is given by a congregation to a minister who has served for a period of time with exceptional devotion, skill, grace, and distinction. Arthur was a strong and courageous minister, leading the congregation through numerical growth and into community engagement. He also helped the congregation envision and fund the building expansion that we have today, with the addition of the RE wing and offices and the commons. Arthur died just a few weeks ago on October 24th and is well remembered here. We hold his family in care as they mourn. And I'll have information soon about the memorial services that will be held for Arthur. So you can see that there are lots of ministers in relationships and lots of ways to be in relationship with a congregation. There are also transitional ministers and developmental ministers and contract ministers and interim ministers and all kinds of various things. And if you're ever curious about all the ministers who have served here, all the photographs are on the wall across from the youth room, on that wall down there, including the pictures of Bill and Arthur that you saw. So let's take a few minutes just to take in all that's been said, because it's a lot. There's a lot of stories and a lot of paths. And if there's any questions, we would be happy to hear those now. Questions for any of us, either on site or online.
I'd just like to ask for permission now that you're all done speaking for the audience to applaud you all.
The hundreds of pages of writings we've done, if you would like to stand and applaud, that would be fine too.
It's rather hard to preach in a Unitarian church one week and then give a sermon in a conservative Methodist church or a Presbyterian church the next week. It's kind of like turning 180 degrees.
Sure. Carbon, are there any questions online? Any other questions? Well, I want to express my gratitude to my colleagues for being here. I know that you have my back. Linda and Crystal and Carol and Sarah and Eric and Nancy. You say yes when I ask you for most things. And Carol, I especially want to just lift up your ministry here. My work here would have been so much harder without you. And I tell people that when I grow up, I want to be just like you. And I also want to just lift up that the shared ministry that Reverend Sarah and I have is not common. We have an exceptional relationship and work together well in a way that isn't seen often. Sometimes there's adversarial relationships between ministers and other staff. And so I'm just most grateful for you. Thank you, Sarah. So thank you, my colleagues, for your loving and life-giving ministry, and thank you for being here. And thank you all. We'll extinguish our chalice, because you know that's what we do. These words are from Charles Howe. May we go forth from this place thankful for the life that sustains us and renews us and open to the grace that surrounds and surprises us. May we go forth from this place with openness and with thanksgiving. Thank you all.